So just to confirm, can you see the slides?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes, all good.
Okay, so if everyone can see and if everyone can hear, what I wanted to do was just to give to set the scene really for this particular session. I just wanted to give a brief update on a project to create standardized teaching resources, which was in fact a project sponsored by MNet in 2017. So that project commenced on the 1st of August. And the idea was really to create a set of standardized, professionalized training resources. And the kind of things that we talked about developing, well, there were three main themes really. One was to create critical guides for popular bioinformatics tools and resources, the things that we're all familiar with, BLAST, how to use Unix, Uniprot, PDB, and so on. I should say there, the emphasis was not on producing standard how to use this resource kind of materials, but rather sets of materials that would engage students and encourage them to think about what the outputs of those tools and resources actually meant, so that they could use them in a more critical kind of way. So just to re-emphasize, these were not how to use guides, but critical guides on how to interpret outputs. The second in the series was aimed at high school teachers to provide some sort of standardized resources introducing bioinformatics to high schools. And the third set was a series of professional guides to help train trainers. Why did we want to do this? The answer is because we wanted to produce some tangible branded products, not just for GOBLET to have, but also for anyone, let's say, who wants to give their materials or show their materials to funders, to encourage them to put more money into their projects. But there was also a feeling that we wanted to encourage best practices in developing training materials, so that people would see the advantage of using standard components when developing their resources. So the design concept that we used in producing these materials came from the UK Higher Apprenticeship Scheme. What I liked about those is that they presented a number of succinct modules in tightly specified units. As I mentioned, using standard components like learning outcomes, key terms, activities, and further reading. So every single module used those components. So the look and feel of them was always the same, and you knew where to find, if it was pink, it was an activity, if it was purple, it was key terms, and so on. So we adopted the same sort of approach, using obviously more GOBLET and MNet-like colours, branding. Each guide has a standard or standardised front cover, which tells you something about the title of the module or series. And every back cover contains the same information, standard text about the participating or the authoring organisations, and about the individual authors themselves. I want to draw your attention to one key feature of the front cover, is that it has a slightly different logo from the GOBLET's actual logo. And we thought this was important to kind of differentiate that this is an endorsement. So this logo specifies that these materials adhere to this GOBLET standard. So inside the guides, as I say, they have these standard headings and mandatory components. So every guide has to state its teaching goals and learning outcomes, the key terms, exercises and take-homes, and further reading. So you can see those components set out there. Hopefully key terms always appear in the same page, same position on a particular page. The front, or the first inside page talks about the learning goals and teaching goals and learning outcomes. There's always take homes at the end, exercises in the middle, further information in boxes, and so on. So in terms of results, we produced 7 critical guides, which we released as part of the Introduction to Bioinformatics series. As I said, they cover the usual suspects, the Uniprots, the PDBs, BLAST, Interpro, and so on. And in terms of the practical guides for high school teachers, the first of those was really inspired by, well, it was work from Marie-Claude and Patricia on bringing bioinformatics into the classroom. And this was one of the first workshops that was presented in the GOBLET AGM 2014 in Toronto, when we did a set of workshops for high school teachers. So those materials really inspired us to kind of gobletize and standardize the resources and produce our first set of practical guides for high school teachers. The work, I have to say, is challenging because we take materials that are designed specifically to be presented online or in person. Things that look like this, typical things with links and text, into something that looks like this, the standard type of guide. The practical guides use a slightly different look and feel from the critical guides. Slightly different only in terms of the fact that the colours are slightly different, but also we try to include more exercises and supplementary boxes, so that there's more for high school students to grapple with and get their hands on. So this was the first, Marie-Claude's using bioinformatics to understand genetic diseases. Since then, we've produced 2 further, or published 2 further guides using Daniel Barker's materials. Similar kind of challenge. You can see there the raw materials, the worksheets, which I had to transform into these kind of standard look and feel. More recently, during this year, I've been working with Stevie. Well, I worked with Stevie on the second of their practical guides. The first was about using computers in bioinformatics. This was specifically on the subject of food fraud. It's called the Food Detective, and this was published earlier this year in F1000 Research, and you'll hear more about that from Stevie in a moment. The second of the more recent practical guides, again in collaboration with Marie-Claude and her colleagues, on drug design. So that's the Food Detective one, so that's been published, and this is the one we've been working on for some months now. It's almost there, and hopefully we'll have that ready to publish within the next couple of weeks. In terms of the future, I have been working quite extensively with the Elixir Train the Trainer people to gobletize some of their Train the Trainer materials, which are currently held in GitHub. And those will form the basis of a new series of professional guides. Again, we have the usual challenge, producing materials that are designed to be delivered online to things that have this standard look and feel. So I've been working on the first of the Train the Trainer modules for GOBLET. So this is principles of learning and how they apply to training. That's very much still a work in progress. Close to completion is what I hope will be the very first guide in this series, which will lay the foundations for all of the Train the Trainer guides, which is the first professional guide to course design, which looks like this at the moment. And again, we're very close to having this finished. Hopefully, again, this will be done within the next couple of weeks. Yeah, the only thing I was going to add about the professional guides is there's one new component that we've not used before, which is a set of reflections. So these are the red components that you see there. So these are sort of thought exercises rather than hands-on exercises. So hopefully that will be finished soon. So to summarise, since August 27, we've created 7 critical guides and published them all on F1000 Research in the Bioinformatics Education and Training section. They also appear on the GOBLET portal, so they're automatically scraped and appear in tests. We've created 4 practical guides for high school teachers, 3 of which have been published, and the 4th due out anytime soon. We've got a near final draft of the first professional guide on course design and a first draft of the first Elixir GOBLET Train the Trainer professional guide. Going forward, I want to complete that series of guides, professional guides, with the Elixir Train the Trainer group. And obviously, we'd be very interested in producing further practical guides or any other guides that people think are worthwhile. And I want to emphasize here, with input from others. So I am retired. I am trying to retire. So I will be doing less work in the years to come, just so you know. So my final slide, I'll finish there. It may be that you want to do questions after Stevie and Marie-Claude have done their bit. But I just wanted to draw your attention before I stop to some statistics on usage of the guides since the first one was published in 2018. For me, what's interesting is that the first practical guide is the one that's been the most popular. So the genetic diseases practical guide has had something like 850 views and almost 200 downloads on F1000 Research. So I think that's telling us something important about the utility and value of these things. And the second most popular is the Raspberry Pi practical guide. So I think this is a worthwhile project and one we need to pursue. And that's it. That's all I have to say.